Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm recording this on January 8th. I'm going to be doing also a live stream after this recording. I'm going to also set up spaces so people can listen in on this recording. A lot is happening in the news, so I want to kind of focus on a certain item before I do the live stream. A lot is happening in the news, and it's going to get worse. This video is going to be dealing with MPOX and HMPV. Okay. All right. So I have the X spaces set up. Now I want to start with France and their first case of MPOX clade 1. Also, there's some data that someone sent me from a published paper about the HMPV epidemiology in China. But before I do that, please subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Also follow me on X. I have 2 channels on X. Follow me on GETTR. It's very important that you follow me on all these channels because there are going to be events that are taking place in 2025 and in 2026 that you're going to need to be informed about. I can't tell you how many times that it's so important to follow my work because I have a unique perspective that is going to help you. With that said, make sure that you subscribe. But also, the videos I do, the news, the feeds, all this, thousands of videos are for free. It's through buying the products on the store and donating and being paid members that helps this operation, all right? So please help by purchasing the products and being a paid subscriber or donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's on the home page at the bottom. You just click the link and you can donate any way you would like. Another way to do it is to be a paid member to my Patreon channel. It's the paid members on my Patreon channel throughout the years that allowed me to be able to do these videos for free, okay? So please be a paid member and be active. It's really important that you're active, not passive. You know, it's about sharing information and getting your perspective also. In addition, I've been requested through, different means, either email or through message boards within the different systems, to do something about self-replicating RNA. I will do a video specifically on that. There are things to worry about and there's things not to worry about, all right? And I think that the people that are talking about self-replicating RNA are only focused on the worst case, low probability, type stuff. And I'm going to give you details of all the different things that could happen and what to worry about and what not to worry about and why it was developed in Japan and all the detail, right? But I can't do that today because that video is going to be very detailed and it's going to be long. All right. So be a paid member. Help with me producing these videos for free. Okay. And get the products on the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. So what I'd like to do is talk about MPOX. All right. France confirmed. All right. This is from UPI News. Okay. But this happened yesterday, last night. All right. Where France confirms first case of new MPOX strain. So January 7th, which was yesterday, French health officials on Tuesday announced the country's first case of a dangerous new strain of MPOX virus that has created havoc in Central Africa. Officials said the patient had not traveled to the hotspot region and was involved in contact tracing with the patient. The new strain, Clade 1b, concerns authorities because it can be rapidly spread and dodge current diagnostics. This person has been in contact with 2 people returning from Central Africa. Okay, so when we recovered MPOX a while back, a few months ago, I was saying a lot of things, but one was the cases that were coming out of the Congo that were popping up in Malaysia and in Europe and in these other countries were individuals that directly had travel history to the region. For this Clade 1, there's Clade 2, and there's Clade 1, and there's 1A and 1B and 2A and 2B. But the bottom line is this: the worst version is Clade 1. The more mild version is Clade 2. This one's Clade 1. And so now we have a data point that shows that there's transmission between people that have traveled to the region, contract MPOX, and then travel back home or wherever, and then have some contact with someone else where they transmit MPOX. So here we have a case where an individual in France did not travel to the region, but was in contact with 2 people returning from Central Africa. All right, so French health authorities said in a translated statement, investigations are underway to find the origin of the contamination and identify all the at-risk contacts around the diagnosed case. All right, so they're still investigating this, but the key is that they know that it's strain. They know the strain. The strain is the subset Clade 1, which can lead to severe illness and sparked the 2022 international MPOX outbreak. Now, a big part of the 2022 outbreak was Clade 2, not Clade 1. The cases that are MPOX in the United States are Clade 2, the far majority of them, I should say. French officials said, however, the chance of the MPOX outbreak in the country remained low. Now, remember what I said months ago. Depending on if you're a boomer or not, and depending on what country you're from, there are many people that were not inoculated with smallpox. Now, smallpox is different than MPOX, right? But they're very similar. And the inoculation is the same. The inoculation for smallpox will give you antibodies against MPOX. So In the United States, they used to inoculate the youth for smallpox. My parents' generation was inoculated for smallpox. People that were in the military were inoculated for smallpox. But they stopped inoculating for smallpox in the United States at around 1972. So my generation, Gen X, stopped getting smallpox vaccinations. And because it's not endemic, it's not something that pops up, seasonally or anything like that. So MPOX, many people have never been exposed in the United States. Now, the other part of this is from the United States perspective, individuals that immigrate to the United States legally have to have a vaccine profile. And one of the vaccine profiles is for smallpox. So, individuals that are newly immigrated to the United States have antibodies. Boomers, when they were younger, were inoculated, but these individuals, depending on when you were inoculated, depends on if you really have robust memory cells. You're talking about people that boomers now are in their late 60s, early 70s. I guess it depends on where you put the delineation point, but 65 and plus. All right. Many of them are in their 70s, approaching 80s. My father is in the early 80s now, I think. So yeah, he's in his early 80s. So the thing is that these individuals that are 70s, 80s, their memory cells are really bad and would not be very robust against MPOX or even smallpox. But the individuals that came over about 10, 20 years ago into the United States and that had smallpox vaccinations, they would have coverage for MPOX. Individuals that maybe immigrated into the United States in the 1970s may not. Okay. They may not have robust memory cells. So it just depends on the health of the patient and the age of the patient and when they were inoculated, if they were inoculated. The point I'm making is many people in the United States are not inoculated for smallpox. Okay. Same thing in Europe. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that if someone from the Congo or exposure from the Congo goes to Europe or to the United States, and that individual that had exposure had MPOX, it's not out of the realm of possibility that it can spread. Pox viruses spread easily. The pox virus will spread very similar to chickenpox, even though chickenpox is not a pox virus. Chickenpox is actually a herpes virus. But the clinical manifestations are very similar. It's a different virus, different genome, but you're going to have the itching, you're going to have the pock marks, it'll spread on the skin, it's contagious. It's not just contagious from skin to skin touch, but also from bedding and clothing. So it's a problem. It's a problem, two reasons. Western society, developed nations do not have robust coverage of smallpox or MPOX because their inoculation programs were discontinued for the most part. Now, if you're a veteran and you were in the service, depending on your age, depends on the robustness of the antibodies. If you served 10 years ago in the service, you probably are okay. But if you served during the Vietnam era, you're probably not okay. So it just depends. Now, I don't know about military service in Europe if they have the same inoculation scheduling for the soldiers as they do in the United States. I just don't know. But I suspect that it's similar. So the way I see this is that you have individuals that contract MPOX from some sort of contact with an individual that traveled to the Congo, or an individual that did travel to the Congo. So if someone travels from the Congo and they are exposed to an individual there that has MPOX, that individual will most likely get MPOX. Now, they come back home, and because they have MPOX and there's an incubation period, then they may start manifesting it on their body, not really realizing what it is, and then spread it through their clothing or bedding or human touch, whatever. And then those individuals that had exposure to that patient that had MPOX then may get it too. So there's this combination of MPOX is highly contagious. It's highly contagious. Pox viruses are highly contagious. Pox genomes are extremely complicated. They're very complex. And then in addition, and there's no real good way to really, it just has to go its course. There's no real good treatment for it. So, all right, you have individuals that that have exposure to someone that has MPOX, and then you have a population that most people do not have antibodies for. Most people don't have antibodies for the smallpox or the MPOX. So that means that if someone has contact with someone that has MPOX, the chances of manifesting a severe case of it is higher, especially if it's clade 1. Why? Because clade 1 has a certain protein that is coded, and that protein, I think it's D14, and D14 is not in the genome for clade 2. That's the main difference. I'd have to look at my notes that are not on my desk here, but I think it's clade 4. I think it's D14 protein. Might be D16, but I think it's 14. So D14 is a protein that allows for clade 1 to be more severe. So you have a population that has low antibodies or low memory cells for smallpox and the cross-reactivity to MPOX. And you have a strain that is floating around that has the D14 protein expression through clade 1. That's problematic. Very problematic. So in the news, they're saying, well, countrywide outbreak remains low. Well, if you catch the person early and you contact trace early, then you can kind of circle the infection and slow it down. That's a true statement. It's easy, even though pox viruses, especially MPOX, are highly contagious. Highly contagious. I can't repeat this more. It's highly contagious, all right? But the way it's transmitted, through clothing, through bedding, through recent touching of surfaces, skin to skin contact, these are things that would spread it. When it comes to a respiratory virus, it's a lot easier to spread because you get, small particulates or small droplets, and you can breathe that in. And so respiratory viruses they have a different dynamic in terms of spreading around the room. Just imagine it this way. You have an MPOX patient and you have 10 people in the room that do not have MPOX. So you put the MPOX patient in the room And if no one touches anything that MPOX patient touched, no one is touching the MPOX patient. And the MPOX patient doesn't spit out droplets that happen to have pox in the mouth, because you can develop pox in the mucosal lining and you know in your gums and if you spit or you have droplets and someone touches those droplets, you could get MPOX. So assume that doesn't happen. Those 10 people in that room have a low probability of getting it. But if one of the 10 people touch the MPOX patient, highly probable that they will get MPOX. Highly probable. If they touch a droplet or a surface that an individual touched that as he was touching, that surface also touched pox that's from the patient, and you touch that surface, highly probable that you will get MPOX. If you put a hat, let's say they were wearing a hat, and they gave you the hat, and one of the 10 people in the room were wearing the hat, they most likely would get smallpox. Not smallpox, MPOX, I'm sorry. MPOX. So the point here is that pox viruses, smallpox and MPOX, are highly contagious. All right, so you have this MPOX patient in, and you know they're touching the food on a buffet. All right, and let's say they're not touching the specific food on the buffet, but they're touching a utensil to scoop up some salad or something. All right, and they put down the utensil, and one of the 10 people pick up that utensil and scoop up salad onto their plate. Most likely, that individual that did not have MPOX is going to get MPOX now, because they touched the utensil from a patient that had MPOX. Okay, so the point here that I'm making is that it's highly contagious, and most likely, let's say those 10 people are millennials, some Gen Xers, but no one had an inoculation for smallpox. That means they don't have cross-reactivity with MPOX. Now, there are vaccines that are being developed for, I mean, Moderna's developing an MPOX vaccine too. And a lot of people are doing it. But the point here is that there are many people that don't have antibodies for smallpox or MPOX. Two different viruses, they're pox viruses, highly contagious. But the way, you know, the old way of developing antibodies was to use the smallpox vaccine against MPOX. Now, new technology is honing in on just MPOX. But the problem still remains. Young people, Gen Xers and younger, Gen Xers aren't even young anymore, but young people and Gen Xers in developed nations basically don't have antibodies for smallpox or MPOX. So if you have that MPOX patient in a room with people that don't have antibodies for MPOX or smallpox, there's a high probability of catching it if they touch something or that individual. There's the problem. Now, the transmission rate is a lot slower than a respiratory, highly infectious respiratory infection. But droplets, like I said, you can have pox in your mouth. So someone that has MPOX or smallpox, and there's droplets, and you touch those droplets somehow, or they sneeze and they sneeze on you, guess what? You're going to get smallpox, or you're going to get MPOX, depending on if that patient has smallpox or MPOX. highly contagious. Most people don't have antibodies for it. And the antibodies that are out there basically are old memory cells that are dying off in geriatric patients. In most cases, in the developed world. It's a little bit different in the developing world because they still are doing, inoculations in smaller in less developed nations. But developed nations, we eradicated and we eradicated smallpox. So we stopped the vaccine. They stopped the inoculation program. So it's a problem. It's a problem. So they're saying the outbreak remains low as long as they did the proper contact tracing and they were able to corral those individuals and quarantine them to prevent any spread. Only if they did that. Now, if you don't believe me, just remember what it was like when you contracted chickenpox in school. Now, in the United States, chickenpox, you usually develop chickenpox in elementary school, all right? And it spreads really fast, really fast. Now, chickenpox is a herpes virus, not a pox virus, but the clinical manifestations are very, very similar. The way it spreads, very, very similar. So French health authorities said cases of the MPOX clade 1b strain have been confirmed in Belgium, Britain, Germany, and Sweden. So the 1b version in clade 1 is the worst one, right? So the clade 1b, the problematic one, is spreading in Europe. Now, we don't have so much of the problem in the United States yet. Now, we do have clade 2b, but I don't know of any, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 cases of clade 1 in the United States, 1b, but it's not really. So it makes more sense that it's happening in Europe because of just the travel that's happening between Africa and Europe. All right, so MPOX clade 1b was first identified in the Democratic Republic of Congo. MPOX can cause a painful rash with skin lesions that can last for up to 4 weeks. Other symptoms include fever, headache, aches, back pain, sluggishness, and swollen lymph nodes. So it's not very specific unless you have further diagnostic testing. Last year in Africa, MPOX resulted in more than 1,000 deaths and more than 50,000 suspected cases. So we're looking at, a decent problem in Africa. Now, is it as bad as, some other things that we recently have gone through? No. But like I said, there's 2 problems here. You have a version, clade 1b, with the D14 protein that allows for more severity and more transmittability. And you have a developed nation population where most of them do not have antibodies for it. Those are facts. Those are straight out facts. Now, do I think that there's going to be a major outbreak of MPOX tomorrow? No. But the thing is, it is getting worse as the months go by. So they're doing an inoculation program in the Congo to try to reduce the number of cases. And over time, that probably will work. That doesn't mean there's not going to be injury from the inoculation. Of course there will be. But the thing is that to stop the spread out of the Congo an inoculation program most likely will be working, but it'll take some time. But in the meantime, you have versions of this already in Europe and most likely in the United States. Now, this is also, they don't mention it, but it's also in Asia. So, it's going to circulate. And as it's circulating, it's going to mutate. And as it's circulating, it's going to spread. So it's a problem. This is a problem. Now, like I said, another element of this is that people have weakened immune systems from the post-COVID era. And with weakened immune systems, it's harder to fight these types of pathogens. So if you had a really robust immune system, you may get MPOX and have less severity. But with a weakened immune system, it's more severe. And I'd have to review my notes on exactly all the different proteins and how it's shutting down the innate immune system. And I've done 3 videos on it already, so I don't know why I'm doing another one. But the thing is that so you have this virus that could be problematic because of a weakened immune system in a post-COVID era, what I call the aftershock. All right, you have a weakened immune system. It's harder to fight it, so the severity is going to be more. Right? That's not for everybody, but if you have enough people that are like that, that's how you get mutations, and that's how you get pathogens that take hold that become more problematic in the society. Now, what's the solution to this? Well, they need to control the outbreak in Congo. You got to get to the source and stop the outbreak in the Congo. And you have to do contact tracing and have early detection and quarantine right away to prevent a pox virus from spreading. All right. So that's what's happening in France. Now, what I want to do, so, there's not a gigantic outbreak, so it's not like, go jump off a building right now. I'm not saying, to panic or anything. But there is an issue, and it's, we'll see. Does this take hold or not? Right now, it has not taken hold, and there isn't a what I'll call a tertiary, or no, I'll call it a secondary outbreak. The primary outbreak is the Congo. Secondary outbreak doesn't seem to be happening in Europe or in the United States or in the Asian countries. So we're lucky. But how longer will we maintain that luck profile? I don't know. All right. So now what I want to do, I want to transition into talking about the MPV. All right. There's a research paper that was published in 2024. And this is in Virology Journal. I'll have this posted on my website. But this is talking about the epidemiology and the diagnosis technologies of human metapneumovirus in China, a mini review. Okay, so this is kind of a review kind of paper. What's going on with it? I'm not going to read the whole paper, but it's interesting. And some of the key features that I want to take a look at. There's different diagnostic approaches. All right, there's the PCR. There's a reverse transcription PCR. There's quantitative PCR. There's LAMP. There's RAA. I'm not going to go into the different versions. So virus isolation, right? So there's different ways to detect. All right, different operating times and different limit of detection. All right. So, and then the cost for them. Now, this is in China, and so there's different methods of detecting HMPV that they use. Now, what is interesting is they're trying to understand how is MPV changing across China. Now, China is a big country, and a lot of people don't realize that, but China is a big country. So you have different regions with different infectivity, with different versions of HMPV. All right. So what are some of the things that we need to kind of? So they went around and they went to different regions. Right? They went to, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. About 18 different regions slash cities. You know, some of the cities that they looked at were Beijing, but they also, you know, Shanghai, and then went to different provinces and they collected samples, right? Lots of different samples. And they divided it out between the genders, male, female, and ages. Less than 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 to 36 months, 36 to 60 months, and greater than 60 months. They were more focused on pediatric patients because HMPV affects pediatric patients the most. Why? Because their immune system isn't as robust because they're developing, and not only that, because they're young, they haven't been exposed to that many pathogens. So, and they looked at the different seasons. They looked at the spring, summer, autumn, and winter season, and if the patients were outpatients or inpatients. Right. So they divided this data out. Now, some of the key takeaways that I think is really important here, and I didn't know this until looking at the paper here. Obviously there are different lineages, but I didn't know like the composition of the different lineages. So we're going to start using terms like A1, A2, A2B, A2C, B1, and B2. These are HMPV lineages that are really important to pay attention to. Now, not all lineages are worrisome. Some are benign, or some are mild. Some are not so mild. All right. The ones that seem to really take hold in these cities like Beijing and in the Yunnan province is A2B. All right. That seems to be a hot one. A2B in terms of numbers here. There was a total there were a total of 1,253. All right, that they analyzed, and 544 of the 1,253 were coming from the A2B lineage. So the A2B is very prevalent in China. Another one that is very prevalent in China is B1 and B2. And they are at 299 and 282 respectively. So I'm concerned just by looking at this chart with the lineage of A2B, B1, and B2. Now, I have not gone into the genomics of this, so I don't know the reasons why. Just like with MPOX, I can tell you the reason why clade 1 is worse than clade 2. It's D14, right? So, what's the driver genomically between, these different lineages? I'd have to research that a little bit. But we got to be concerned with A2B, B1, and B2 in terms of number of cases that were the more prevalence of those lineages across China. Let's kind of view it that way. All right. So now I want to take a look at some other issues here. Where is it? There's another chart that I wanted to take a look at. Okay, if we if we cross-section the data, where we looked at the number of tested samples relative to the number of positive samples in these different regions, and we looked at it from a female to male cross-section here. The number of samples that were analyzed for the female were 35,669. The number of positives that came out of those samples were 1,823. And out of, so, a decent number, right? And male cases were 57,000, or samples, I should say, 57,468, while it was only 2,000. So it seems as though positivity within the female population seems to be a little bit higher. Okay? Because there were less samples and you had about 1,800 positives. With the males, there were more samples, but less, but at about 2,000. So the percentage is actually higher for the females versus the males. Now, why is that? Is that because of some sort of one child policy in China, and it just kind of skews the data somehow? I doubt it, but that's maybe a reason, part of the reason. Now, another thing that when I look at the data that's interesting here is that when you look at the age groups, now again, the age groups are less than 6 months and 6 to 12 months. Now, less than 6 months, you don't have any adaptive immunity. All right? Or let me rephrase that. Your IgGs are not effective yet. All right? And your immune system is not as robust until after 12 months. So the less than 6 month category, problematic, and the 6 to 12 month, problematic. But they've also gone from 12 to 36 months, 36 to 60 months, and greater than 60 months. Now, when I look at this data, right, I'm seeing the less than 6 months. So those are the ones that have the least robust immune system for the pediatric patients. Out of 12,991 samples, 582 tested positive. In the 6 to 12 month category, 8,771 samples were tested and 371 tested positive. And then when you start looking at, let's say, the 36 to 60 months, 16,454 samples and 634. Greater than 60 months, 18,790 samples tested, and positivity was at 276. So the bottom line here is this. When you're younger, just less than 6 months old to 6 to 12 months old, there's a higher probability of getting it. When you get older, there's less positivity. Another thing that seems to, and this is strange to me. Now, remember, these cases, the surge of HMPV happened in December. Okay, that's the winter. Those are the winter months. They consider winter January, February, December. Okay. Now, if you look at the data of this paper, which is before the surge, before this last surge, there were 3,994 samples with 147 positives out of those samples. That was in the winter. Now, they're saying there were there were over 1,000 hospitals that were inundated with flu-like illness, right? And that many of them were HMPV. That's the latest information that's coming out of China that we know of. Now, what the numbers exactly are, we don't know. So, okay, now according to this paper, the largest percentage of cases should be in the spring, March to May, with 373 positives out of a 3,076 samples that were tested. It starts to die down in the summer and autumn, where you take 3,051 samples, and there's only 39 cases. So cases ramp up, the highest in the spring. They start to ramp. Let me rephrase that. They start to ramp up in the winter, but the peak is in the spring, and then in the summer it starts to come back down. That's the pattern in China for HMPV. Now, if they're worried in December and they have high cases, and India's starting to have cases, there's 6 that I know of as of yesterday, all right, or the day before. I'm sure there's more cases now, but the thing is that there were 6 cases in India. There were 327 cases in Malaysia, and previous year comps are 225 out of Malaysia. So there's a surge that's taking place in Asia during the time period in the year where it's not the peak. The peak is going to be March and May. That means that what we're seeing in China, if this data is representative of what's happening with the dynamics in China, means that March through May, it's going to be worse than what's going on. Big takeaway. So if people think that this is just going to die down and the pneumonia is just going to go away and it's no big deal, it's not going to affect America, bullshit. Why? Because previous research suggests that pediatric patients in China peak with number of cases in March and May, but they have a surge in December. We haven't seen the peak yet. It's not going to happen until the end of the first quarter to the beginning of the second quarter of this year. So as people are traveling around, as you have, students, on student visas coming into the United States, there's going to be a spreading of HMPV. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone it's going to be severe. The far majority of the population is not a pediatric patient. The far majority of the population is not a geriatric patient. But the thing is, people are going to get it, and they're going to be either asymptomatic or mild. Even if you're healthy, you can get HMPV and not even realize you have it. But you can spread it to someone that is geriatric or a pediatric patient. And now it starts to become a problem across the country. Now, HMPV has been in, our population in the United States. It's been floating around, but it hasn't been problematic. But there's a surge that's taking place now. And then you add in all these other things of the aftershock from the COVID era of a weakened immune system, stuff being sprayed in the air. What the hell is the fog? No one knows. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that with a weakened immune system, that HMPV becomes a little bit more problematic in the United States, especially for pediatrics and for geriatrics. So according to this data, the peak is going to be in March through May, not December and January. So if the surge is starting to start, that means it's going to get worse. And other countries are going to have it. And this might be the part of the reason why India is a little bit in an alert mode. Not, I wouldn't say panic yet, but you start listening to some of the Indian news, which I have played. There is an element of panic, a little bit of element of concern. Now, some of the doctors in India are saying, this is, no big deal, no big deal, no big deal. But if it's no big deal, why is there a huge surge in China when it's not supposed to take place until the spring? Something's happening. What is it? Something leak? Something mutate? We don't know. But at least we know to start looking at the different lineages like A2B, B1, and B2. Now I'm honing in on something here. Before, two episodes ago, I didn't know which lineage to hone in on. So we're getting a little bit closer. There's also a lineage A2C, but that seems to be lower on the number of cases. Now the provinces. Now, if we zoom in on the another interesting fact here is like, what about the provinces? Where's most of these cases coming from? Out of the 1,253, for prevalence for HMPV for the province, we had the one that pops up the most is Beijing City. It's 669 out of the 1,253 that I was mentioning before. Now, in Beijing, the largest one is the A2B. Now, the next province that's problematic is the Hunan province at 208 out of the 1,253. And again, the one that is most prevalent is the A2B. So looking at this data set, it gives me the feeling that something is going on with A2B. But it's possible that one of the other lineages that were low in prevalence mutated and became more prevalent in China. We don't know without having the genomic sequencing. All right, so those are some of my initial thoughts on the epidemiology in China regarding to the HMPV. The surge that's taking place seems to be out of sync with typical surges, and the peak historically usually is in March through May. That's a big one. Most of the patients are 12 months or less. As a percentage of their that cohort group. Seems to be that there's more females than males that have a problem. But that may be a manifestation of the whole one China policy and skewing the data. I'm not sure about that. And my feeling is focus on A2B, B1, and B2. So those are the updates that I have on HMPV and MPOX. It's not panic time. But the thing is, something is happening. I mean, yeah. I've been alive for a while, all right? A lot of experience, a lot of education. And I'm telling you, I've never seen so many problematic, pathogenic issues in such a short amount of time in my life experience. And I'm willing to bet for the ones that have been around for a while, they don't remember a time like this either. Something's happening. And what is it? Is it man doing things it shouldn't be doing? Is there some sort of divine punishment that's going on? Is it just some sort of, randomness of chaos, and that we're just living in, we were living in a Goldilocks moment, and all of a sudden we're not living in a Goldilocks moment through just randomness. Who knows? Well, no one knows. But the thing is, when you look at it from prior years or prior decades, things just seem to be moving faster and have more impact. Why is that? I don't know. I don't know. I have my gut feelings, but I can't prove it. But I'm going to do the telemetry live stream after this, and please help support my work. All right, subscribe to all the channels. That's important. I get strikes on YouTube. I have to be careful on what I say. If you notice, I can't tell you what to take when I talk about pathogens, but but in other videos, I do tell you what to take when I'm covering like fires in LA. All right. So you got to pay attention because I have to walk a fine line because of the censorship on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, my 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. If you listen to me very carefully, I tell you exactly what to do. Just follow my lead. You'll be okay. There's no panacea, there's no magic bullet, but you can mitigate. You can mitigate your risks. Just pay attention, and you'll be okay. So make sure you subscribe to these channels and help support the work by getting the stuff that I have on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And you can also donate. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee on my website, or be a paid member to Patreon. It's through the membership of Patreon, it's through the donations, and it's through the people that purchase the products that allows me to provide free videos giving you really important information that nobody else is. Because I'm really sure that nobody told you in the last 60 days, probably ever, that, you know what, we probably need to start worrying about A2B, B1, and B2 for HMPV out of China. Nobody is as detailed as I am. Nobody. Please help support my work. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.